Well, hello geometers and seekers of general truths. In this video, we will study the equation of a line described in point slope form. So if you have taken Algebra 1, you probably have written lots of equations of lines, and perhaps often you write those equations in slope-intercept form. And that's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But there is another way that we could go about this. Okay, so let's look at this, right? So let's talk about what point slope form is. Now, let's say that I have a generic line here that goes through a couple of different points. Let's say that it goes through some particular point here, and let's just say for the sake of the argument, this is 1, 3, right? And then it goes through some other mystery point here, xy, so some other point on the line here, and we're going to use xy as the variable for the equation of the line. So let me label this. This is the x-axis, this is the y-axis. Right? Well, one thing that we do know about a line is that every point or any 2 points on that line must have the same slope, right? So the steepness of this line is the same no matter which points you pick. So if we think about slope as m, right? So I'm sorry, let's try that again. Let's calculate slope the way we normally do it. Change in y, so this is y minus 3, right? Divided by change in x, which is x minus 1, and that must be equal to the slope. We're using the variable m here to represent slope. So now we can kind of rearrange things a little bit and just multiply both sides by x minus 1. So we get y minus 3 is equal to m times the quantity x minus 1. And the way that this is written here, it's called point slope form because you need to know a slope and you need to know a specific point. Okay, and we can also generalize this, that let's say we didn't know this point was 1, 3. Now let's say this was some other point that we're working with here. Let's call this a comma b. Okay. Then, excuse me, then we can apply the exact same format. Y minus b, that's the change in y, or the rise, over x minus a, right, is equal to the slope. So rearrange and we get y minus b is equal to the slope multiplied by x minus a. Okay. So this is the general format here, and let me clarify a few things here, that m represents the slope of the line and that AB is a known point on the line. Okay. So again, this is what we call point slope form, and in the example here that I give, in the next couple of examples here, we'll see why point slope form is really useful, and then we'll connect this, of course, to slope intercept form as well. Okay, so let's look at this example. Write an equation for a line that passes through 2, 3, and 5, 8. Okay. Now, to write an equation of any line, we need to know two things. We need to know the slope and we need to know a point. In this case, we know 2 points already, so we just need to figure out the slope. So the slope of this line is equal to the change in y, which is 8 minus 3, divided by the change in x, which is 5 minus 2. So I get a slope of 5 over 3, or 5/3. Now to write it in point slope form, we could use either of these points. It doesn't really matter which one we use. They are going to describe the exact same line. So m is the slope, AB is some known point. So the way that we can write this equation is y, I'm going to use this point here. I'm going to use 2, 3. Y minus 3 is equal to the slope, which is 5/3, right, times x minus this x coordinate, x minus 2. So this is one good solution to this particular problem. Another equally good solution is to use the other point. Y minus 8 is equal to 5/3 times x minus 5. So again, I'm using this point right here instead of using the first point. And this equation of the line is also perfectly good. Okay? And if you think about how we just did this, right? There are limited calculations that we had to do. All we really had to do was calculate the slope, and then use the format of point slope form. Okay. So here's another good example here. Let's say you're given a slope, but you don't know 2 points. You just have 1 point, right? Well, we can do this pretty quickly. We know that using this format, y equals, or y minus the known coordinate here. We'll call this is a and b, right? So y minus this coordinate y minus 7 is equal to the slope, which is -3 times x minus 2. Okay. So these sorts of questions are pretty quick to answer if we study them in the context of point slope form. As always, ask questions if you need help. Thank you for watching, and have a wonderful day.